I'm Devon Grimes and this is Betty. I'm an artist, primarily a painter right now, formerly a florist. Sometimes a hand model. We live on the Bushwick Ridgewood border in a about 380 square foot apartment. It's a studio. Since I've had this apartment for about 5 years, I have moved the furniture around pretty much any way that it can be moved. This setup is actually a little bit new to me, but it's a little bit more conducive to actually painting in my space, which I've only been doing for about 2 years now. So it's a little bit tight for me to work and live in, but this is how I've done it. So as you might see, I'm pretty meticulous. So working with paint where I live in my actual living space, like on my rug, is a challenge. Normally I put tarps down. Here are all the colors, all the paints. It's not usually this organized. I did do this for you, Mitch, but it's pretty organized usually. This is the first piece of real furniture I bought as an adult. I got it on Etsy. And actually the shipping for it was more expensive than the dresser itself. Honestly, I think that the color has really influenced a lot of my work in general. I've really come around to orange. I don't know what drew me to it, but I'm a big fan of it. On top of it, I have, it's like a little shrine of things that were my grandmother's, mostly just perfume. I don't really wear any of them, but when I'm feeling like particularly nostalgic or sad or like I miss Nona, I smell some of them. This one, Chloe, smells, yeah, just like her. And this is an interesting problem to have in such a small space, is that you have very limited wall space. And when you combine that with being a painter, you have even less wall space because, as you can see, the canvases and all of my materials take up so much space. So I really have to be like particular about what I want to look at. This is a lithograph that my uncle, who used to work in the arts in LA, he gifted me because it says my last name on it, which is really special. I don't know if it's something I would pick out myself, but I really do love the way that it looks with my dresser. Betty, Princess Betty, is sleeping on her heating pad. Betty lives here in one of her many beds, also on the couch, also in my bed. Honestly, like, we mostly live amongst my shoes. I don't typically look at my own work unless I'm working on it. I've done a few paintings in this style, but I wouldn't say it's my natural style, and I really enjoy the way this one turned out. And I think honestly it's nice to have something of your own that you actually like, because as an artist I think a lot of us don't like our work, but you have to be picky about what you put out in such a small space. I studied Alice Neal in school, and she's been a big influence on my life, and she actually, something I love, especially when I'm feeling bad about myself, living in such a small space and having had this space for so long. I don't think I thought 5 years ago that I would still be living in this apartment. Not that there's anything wrong with it. I love it and it's beautiful and it has great light, but I often compare myself to my peers or to my friends, and I have to remind myself that like I'm going a different way. And so living in a small space is part of that path. Being a full-time creative is not always, you know, the easiest, but Alice Neal, when she was painting, when she first had, I think, her first son, she was very poor. She used to go and steal food, and she would steal oil paints, and she would just paint like all the time, no matter what, like no matter what it took. And she is one of like arguably the most successful female painters in modern history. So, you know, if she can make it work, so can I. But I feel like she's a really good reminder for me to like be present and thankful for what I do have. So you might notice that I have a lot of storage kind of everywhere. My running joke is that I'm living in my closet. I built all of the storage, if that makes any of it better. When I first moved into this apartment, there's only this closet that's built in, and there's a pantry on the other side in the kitchen. So I bought these from IKEA, and I built them before I moved my furniture in here. And it took me so long because you're supposed to have like 2 or 3 people to build these together, but I did it by myself. You're gonna be like appalled if I show you. I have like so many sweaters. So many that I actually had to use this instead of a hanging rack as just like folded sweaters. Big fan of sequins. This is my, here, this moves. That's another part of living in such a small space. Everything needs to be kind of mobile. The cord extends because this whole thing moves. Everything moves. This moves, that table doesn't move. But everything needs to move so I can get in and out of stuff. I would almost never show anyone this. So when I moved in here for about the first 2 years, I didn't have a couch. When my parents came to visit once and I showed them the space, my dad was like, "Can I sit in your chair?" Because I don't know why if he thought it was like decorative, but it was the only place you could sit besides my bed. And I think after that, I was like, oh, I should probably get like a couch or something to sit on. But it is so difficult to find aesthetically pleasing and functional pieces. I found this piece at Davinci Co-op in Greenpoint. I feel really lucky that I found it because it is very much my style and the color is neutral. It's not great for Betty because she gets hair everywhere, but you know, it's also not precious because I got it secondhand. I think living in such a small space for so long has in many ways made me feel insecure because I'm not, you know, you can relate to this because you live in New York and we understand, but people outside of New York don't often understand what it takes to actually live in New York and pay for New York and still chase your dreams. So something about having just like a couch, like a formal little tiny couch, it makes me feel like it's a bit more like a home. Something that is unique about this studio apartment is it's actually an alcove studio, as in the bed is in an alcove. It's like a recessed, it's not fully a room, but it's recessed from the main area, and the kitchen and bathroom are also set out into an alcove. So not everything is just in one space. The kitchen is weirdly big for the size apartment. It was very ugly when I first moved in, as was the whole apartment. It was all painted brown and a powder blue. The kitchen itself was just like the old wood cabinet. So this was the first room I gave a lot of attention to when I first moved in, or the first space, I guess. I refinished the cabinets. I like sanded, did everything. My dad does home renovations, so I feel like I inherited that skill. Or I learned it, rather. I redid the floors. They're laminate floors, but I did just put them on top of the old floors, mostly because there's only a certain amount of money I'm gonna put into a space that I don't actually own. But I'm pretty happy with how they turned out, and they're much easier to clean than the old floors. The kitchen has really nice light because it has this interior window. It's not a great view, no. And it is dirty because I've never been able to open the window, but it gets really good light, and it's the only place in the apartment that my plants have survived over the years. Another thing about living in such a tight space is I always feel like I need more surfaces. Like obviously I don't have a kitchen table. I don't really even have a table, to be totally honest. That is a running joke I have when people tell me like, oh, they don't have room for this or they don't have this. I'm like, I don't even have a table. Like, not one. I have like 5 folding tables in my car for the market that I sell prints at, but not in my apartment because you have to make sacrifices. But I found this and I really like it. It's a stove cover and it just gives me like more of a counter space, which sounds so basic, but in such a small working area, like when I'm trying to cook or if I'm cleaning brushes or whatever, it's really necessary to have more counter space. These plants I've actually had for the entire time I lived in this apartment, which is pretty good because I wouldn't say I have the biggest green thumb, but I specifically moved them up here and installed this shelf so that they could get as much light as possible. And then to continue with the plants theme, I hung one of my other favorite paintings, my own paintings, next to it, which I think makes for a really like lively pop. I haven't gone as far as painting any of the main spaces in the apartment, and I do love color, and I think if I owned the space I would wallpaper the kitchen or definitely paint it, but I'm not ready to invest that much of my time into it since I don't own it. So having pops of color is important for me. I felt like this made a really nice little vignette over here, keeping the plants around. Also, that's a painting I won't sell because I also just really like it. It holds a lot of memories for me. So off of our kitchen is the bathroom. The bathroom is my favorite room in the apartment. It's the only room that is painted. I picked a high gloss paint because I saw it in a interiors magazine. I even had the ceiling painted. It just makes it so calming for me. Two things that I got from this apartment that I did not have in my old apartment, which I wanted, was a bathroom window, which with natural light, which is very rare for New York, and a bathtub, which is also I think rare for New York, or at least the apartments I've lived in. This cabinet was built in. It's really stuck to the wall. There is no back to it, which is funny because when I had the bathroom painted, I had them like paint the wall inside of it, but if this ever comes off, it's just gonna be like a square outline. It's super old. I mean, I'm assuming it looks like it's lived here forever. And finally, we have my bedroom, the alcove bedroom. Again, sticking with the theme of fabric. Big fan. Lots of fabric going on here. I love stripes. I'm wearing stripes. Stripes are often found in a lot of my paintings. I've been obsessed with stripes my whole life. This is the tightest space for having the largest piece of furniture, but I flip-flopped having my bed in the main area, putting it back here. I don't think there's like a right way about it, but for now, this is how it is. The bed frame itself is much higher than I think normal because again, such a small space requires extra storage, which I have under the bed. And Betty needs a way to get on the bed, so she has an ottoman, which also has to kind of half fit, half in, half out. So while living in a small space, you really have to be cognizant of what you want to stare at all the time. Typically, I don't love gallery walls, but I think because I'm working with limited space, it's nice for me. They're all pieces that I have been very intentional about selecting, and I like them. In a way, again, it goes back to the idea of a wallpaper for me, like having the entire wall covered versus just like a square section or the midsection does feel a bit more patterny. And I think because most of them are works by friends or people that I know, I like them, of course, but also I find inspiration from them because they're by other working artists. That's it. That's my home. That's my 380 square feet. So it's the perfect size apartment for Betty. Yeah. And it's workable for me. And I'm pretty happy with how it looks. Thanks for coming. Bye.